The movie opens with a heartwarming scene of two young boys joyfully playing near old railroad tracks, capturing a moment of childhood innocence. Suddenly, the scene shifts to bustling Los Angeles, where we meet William Sharp, also known as Will, in his apartment, a stark contrast to the carefree past. This scene sets the tone for the intense drama that follows, as we soon find Will talking urgently on the phone, his voice tinged with desperation. He tells the operator he's been trying to reach someone for weeks. He urgently explains that his wife is desperately needing surgery, but the operator, with a tone of helplessness, replies that she's unable to assist him. He reminds her with a hint of bitterness that he once put his life on the line for his country, yet all she can offer him in return is a hollow apology before she ends the call. But when Amy walks in holding their baby boy, he tells her the good news. The insurance is going to pay for her surgery. Feeling relieved, she asks him where he's going as he begins to walk out of their apartment. He tells her he's off to an interview for a forklift truck driver job at a warehouse. As he leaves, he gets a phone call from Danny, his brother, and tells him that he will be there soon. When they meet, Will tells Danny that he needs $231,000 for his wife's experimental surgery. Danny confesses that he doesn't have the money to offer him a loan, but he might have a way for him to earn the money and more in a bank heist worth $32 million. Will refuses to take part in the heist. He doesn't want that way of life. He served his country to get away from it. He doesn't want to be like their father. As the rest of the heist crew are getting ready to leave, Danny finally convinces Will to come along. He reassures him that the guns are only for protection. Will reminds himself that he is doing this for Amy. Elsewhere in Los Angeles, EMT Cam Thompson attends to Lindsay, a young girl who is stuck in the back of a car after a road traffic collision. Cam gently holds her hand, offering reassurance as she is carefully cut free from the car. In the ambulance, Cam makes sure that Lindsay gets to the hospital safely before leaving to grab lunch. At lunch, Cam's new colleague makes small talk with her in an effort to get to know her, but she quickly becomes defensive. Back with the heist crew, everyone leaves in a delivery truck and heads toward the LA Federal Bank. After parking in the underground car park, some of the crew cover their faces and they enter the bank. Outside the bank, Officer Zach and Officer Mark are sitting in a patrol car talking about a crush that Officer Zach has on one of the employees inside the bank. He works up the courage to go into the bank to ask her out on a date, but it's closed. He knocks on the door and draws the attention of Danny, who is posing as the bank manager. Danny tells him that a transfer is taking place right now, which means the bank must remain closed as a safety precaution. After some persuasion, Danny reluctantly lets Officer Zach inside to speak to one of the staff members. Inside the bank, all staff members are hidden from sight and being held at gunpoint by the heist crew. Oblivious to this, Officer Zach approaches the woman he wants to ask out and realizes that something is wrong. As his suspicions grow, Danny holds him at gunpoint and tells him to wave to his colleague, Officer Mark, outside to let him know that everything is fine. Down in the vault, the real manager of the bank tells the heist crew that there is $32 million in the vault before leaving. They start to load up the money while another gang member takes jewelry from the safety deposit boxes. The heist is nearly over when Officer Mark becomes suspicious after speaking to the driver of the delivery truck outside the bank. Realizing that the officer is suspicious, the driver opens fire on Officer Mark. A shootout begins, and backup from the Special Investigation Section, SIS, of the LAPD arrives. One by one, each member of the team is killed by the officers. By coincidence, EMT Cam and her colleague were walking back from lunch nearby when they heard the gunshots. They run towards the ambulance and start driving towards the scene to help. Back inside the bank, Will and Danny realize that the plan has gone wrong and quickly try to escape through the underground car park. As they argue about the best course of action, Officer Zach grabs the opportunity to escape, but Danny quickly stops him. They both begin to fight, and as Will tries to break them up, he shoots Officer Zach in the leg. Before leaving, Will tells Officer Zach how to stem the bleeding. After exiting the bank, Will and Danny have no option but to keep running through the car park as police officers surround the building. Upon entering the underground car park, Officer Mark discovers Officer Zach bleeding out. EMT Cam and her colleague redirect the ambulance and attend to Officer Zach at the scene. It doesn't look good as Officer Zach becomes less responsive, so they quickly transfer him into the ambulance and head towards the hospital. As the ambulance starts to exit the car park, Danny realizes that they have an opportunity to leave the scene unnoticed. He holds the ambulance at gunpoint and punches the driver before dragging him from the front seat. Will takes over driving the ambulance as Danny holds EMT Cam at gunpoint in the back as she provides treatment to Officer Zach. After convincing the officers surrounding the bank to let them leave to get Officer Zach to hospital, Danny tells Cam that he'll radio for help as soon as they're clear from the authorities. He reassures her that he's a good guy. Back in the car park, Officer Mark discovers EMT Cam's colleague on the ground. He is only semi-conscious, but manages to explain what happened. He provides a description of Will and Danny to Officer Mark. As the ambulance continues to flee the scene, Will notices that there's a police helicopter out searching for them. They stop in an alleyway where Cam takes the opportunity to try and escape. She sprays foam from a fire extinguisher at Danny to distract him and runs from the ambulance. He chases after her, and she decides to return to the ambulance after hearing that Officer Zach's heartbeat has stopped. She performs CPR as the ambulance continues to drive. Realizing they need a better escape plan, Danny calls some of his associates who weren't involved in the heist to ask them for help. He agrees to give them a cut of the heist money in exchange for their help. One of the associates, Poppy, was a friend of Danny's father and agrees to use his trucks to create a diversion to slow down the police cars chasing them. The situation is really tense. They have managed to lose the police cars, but a helicopter is still following them. They are safe for now because they have a police officer, Zach, with them, but he is very hurt. If Zach dies, the police outside will start shooting at them. SIS Captain Monroe tries to talk to them over the radio, wanting to make Danny give up, but Danny just shuts off the radio. Seeing Zach in such a bad way, Cam asks Will if he can give some of his blood to try and save Zach. Will knows this might also keep the police from shooting, so he agrees to do it. As the chase intensifies, the police step up their efforts, bringing in more cars to catch the ambulance. FBI agent Anson Clark, who knows Danny, is on the case. Clark is aware of how dangerous Danny can be when he feels cornered, adding to the tension. Then, a police car almost catches up with the ambulance, but has to back off fast after finding Captain Monroe's dog in the back. Inside the ambulance, this sudden twist makes Officer Zach's condition go from bad to worse, turning critical. The pressure mounts, and every second becomes crucial as the situation grows increasingly desperate. He needs surgery if he's going to survive. Even though Cam has no experience in surgery, she's willing to do everything possible to save Officer Zach's life. She calls her ex-boyfriend, a doctor called Connor, to ask him to talk her through the surgery. He adds two of his colleagues who are trauma specialists to the call. Together, they all successfully talk Cam through performing the surgery. As the surgery begins to finish, the battery on Cam's phone runs out, ending her call with Connor. To her horror, Officer Zach's spleen suddenly erupts. She's forced to take drastic measures with Will's assistance to stop him from bleeding out. Danny takes over the driving as Will helps Cam finish the surgery, but refuses to slow down when asked. Unaware that the surgery was a success, Connor calls the FBI to tell them that he spoke to Cam. From his update, the FBI presumes that Officer Zach has died and decides to use snipers to take out the ambulance. They know that there's a risk that they will kill Cam in the process. Agent Clark attempts to contact the ambulance once more by radio and reaches Cam. He tells her what's about to happen and instructs her to stay as low as possible to avoid the bullets. Cam questions how she can protect Officer Zach. Realizing that he's still alive, Agent Clark rushes to call off the snipers, but it's too late. Shots are fired as Cam warns Will and Danny about the attack. Angry at the attack, Danny speaks with the officers by radio. He tells them that they need to start taking him seriously. He warns them that hostages are at risk as he holds Cam at gunpoint. She challenges him to shoot, and he does, but he misses. A fight breaks out between Will and Danny as they disagree about how to handle the situation. During the fight, Danny shouts Will's name, finally allowing the radio officers to identify him as Danny's brother. Having identified Will as the weakest link in the operation, Agent Clark attempts to talk him into pulling over. He reminds him of his family and offers him a way out if he cooperates. Will refuses and ends communication with Agent Clark. Cam opts for a gentle approach with Will, bringing up his wife in their conversation. Coincidentally, at that very moment, his wife calls him on video to see how he's doing. He informs her he's currently at work, having secured the position he interviewed for that day. Delighted by his achievement, she thanks him for taking care of everything on her behalf. After a quick chat with their son, the call comes to an end. As the ambulance reaches the Los Angeles River, they are joined by more helicopters in close pursuit. Danny starts to shoot at them as they speed ahead and reaches a meeting point with another one of his associates, Castro. Under immense time pressure, Castro quickly spray paints the ambulance green and then switches to a decoy ambulance. Meanwhile, Will and Danny, now in the newly painted green ambulance, skillfully slip past the police cars and head towards Poppy's hideout. Distracted by the decoy ambulance, the police officers tell Castro to exit the vehicle and question him. As the ambulance lies empty, Poppy takes the opportunity to tell his son, Roberto, to take it to create a further distraction. Roberto fills the decoy ambulance with explosives and rigs some nearby cars with machine guns to automatically fire as both the ambulance and the cars roll toward the police officers and their cars. Captain Monroe gets caught in the crossfire from a machine gun. In a moment fueled by revenge, Officer Mark chases after Roberto, Poppy's son, and fatally shoots him. Overwhelmed with grief for his son, Poppy unleashes his anger on Will and Danny when they arrive. He insists that they leave Cam and Officer Zach with him. Initially, Danny seems to agree and begins to leave. However, Will stands his ground, determined to protect the ambulance with Cam and Officer Zach still inside. Seeing this, Danny's frustration grows. He initially concedes to Poppy's demands, but when Poppy coldly claims that Will isn't Danny's real brother, something shifts inside Danny. In a defiant act of loyalty, Danny turns on Poppy, showing that the bond he shares with Will goes beyond blood. Opening fire on Poppy and his gang, Danny proves his brotherhood with Will. Together, they bravely take down Poppy and his entire crew, solidifying their unbreakable bond. Inside the ambulance, Officer Zach has regained consciousness. After hearing the shooting, both him and Cam fear the worst. Cam takes Officer Zach's gun. As Will opens the door, Cam panics and shoots him in the chest. Horrified at what she's done, she loads him into the ambulance and attempts to stem the bleeding. As she treats him, Will hands her a lump of cash. He tells her to give it to his wife and starts to lose consciousness. Determined to save Will's life, Danny drives the ambulance to the hospital. When they arrive, armed police vehicles surround them, leaving them unable to exit the vehicle. FBI agent Clark manages to make radio contact with the ambulance once more, trying to convince Danny to surrender. But Danny sees Officer Zach's gun on the floor and gets really angry, thinking that Officer Zach is the one who shot Will. As Cam admits the truth, Danny threatens to kill her on live TV, knowing the police will probably shoot him for it. Seeing no other way out, Will makes a tough decision and shoots Danny in the back just as he opens the ambulance door. Officers swarm in quickly. They rescue Cam and rush Officer Zach into the hospital. After being dragged from the vehicle, Will lies face down on the ground in handcuffs next to Danny. Before succumbing to his injuries, Danny apologizes to Will. In the background, his wife runs toward the scene with their baby in her arms. Just as she's about to leave, Cam notices Will still lying on the ground, his condition worsening. She quickly runs to him, helps him to his feet, and guides him into the hospital. Once the hospital staff take over, he, in a weak voice, asks Cam to tell his wife that he's sorry. Once her shift ends, Cam leaves the hospital and heads home. She stops by Amy, telling her Will is the hero who saved her. Walking away, she quietly slips the money Will gave her into the baby carrier close by. In the hospital, police arrest Will and keep an eye on him even as he lies in his hospital bed. Amy, holding their baby, watches him from outside the window. As Will gets better, things start to look up for him. Officer Zach shares with the FBI that Will is actually a hero for saving his life, suggesting Will's troubles might just soon fade. Thank you for watching this recap. Be sure to tell us your favorite part of the story in the comments below. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next exciting recap.